I'm here today to talk about a revolution. This revolution is not yet so visible to the eye that you really believe it. But just as the earth is slowly turning around, this is changing our lives day by day. For me, the realization of a change has come in many different forms, and I will try to go through 4 main ideas about how I see this revolution happening. It started with the realization that we no longer have clean energy for free. We don't even have energy for free. We're going into an age where I think we're realizing that we're dependent on nature for energy. For me, the realization about this was profound. I had worked a few years in the advertisement industry, and I've grown a bit weary of the way they were working, so I changed my company name to Design Meaning. And I applied to industrial design school, and once I got in, I got an internship doing packaging design, which perhaps wasn't so meaningful, but at least, you know, this product was launched on the market, and my mother could go to the pharmacy and buy this solar block that I had designed. And she was proud, and she told her colleagues, and my aunt was proud, and she told her colleagues. And a few weeks later, they were even like on the morning news. My aunt saw the product, so she turned up the phone. You're going to be famous, she was about to call me. But to put the product on the counter like this and looked into the camera and said, "This product kills ocean life." This was profound for me. It changed everything. I had to look into the description of my job. What was I really designing? And design meaning wasn't the top of, you know, the thoughts that came to mind. So this started something new for me. I realized that I sort of unintentionally bumped my head into the roof of a funnel, because ocean life supplies are going down. Fossil fuel is going down. At the same time, as these supplies are getting less and less, our demands are getting higher. The population, it's growing. Our need for food, it's growing. The need for energy as well is growing. So, being in a reactor core, I had to take an obvious example. Japan. They experienced the failure of this very vision. Now they have to lower their energy with 15%. And that affects everything. It affects companies. They're no longer allowed to put the air conditioning units below 28 degrees. And, you know, businessmen in Japan are quite formal. They have suits and ties. So it also affects fashion. They introduced a new concept and did fashion shows calling it super cool biz, to have short-sleeved shirts, chinos, and even sneakers. And amazingly enough, this has created a profound change in how the businessmen in Tokyo have their clothing. You can even notice it if you go to Tokyo now and look at the streets. They're kind of walking along a bit more easily. So why did this come as a reaction and not as a cultural change that came from, oh, it makes sense to dress less warm in a warm climate? I think it comes from our mindset. I have the opportunity to meet a lot of designers. I go and have lectures in a lot of different schools, and most of the meetings end with the feeling of, I have to, sort of a pessimism. You know, we have to be less bad. We have to stop consumption. And I think this is very scary, coming from the most creative minds that are going to come up with a vision that are going to save us. In fact, most of the design students feel like the band on the Titanic. They're just playing a happy tune that maybe for a short while will make us all smile, but deterministically we're heading straight along into a big iceberg. This sort of was even worse than I thought, so I started looking for optimism. I went around. There have to be people that think we can do this more sustainable, right? Do the designs better. And I got into a discussion with a few friends from school, and they say, we share your vision. I think we can do a revolution. So it doesn't look like it, but they had big important jobs in big companies, and they quit those jobs to come work with me on this new vision. And what we find was shocking. 50% or 46%, almost half of what companies pour in to production development and launching fails. It doesn't give any return. You know how that is? That's like cooking dinner for your friends every second day. They come there and say, this is terrible, we're going to throw it away. How wasteful is that? And at the same time, the decisions made in the design phase affects 80% of the environmental impact. And most designers doesn't know that. That's scary. But it's interesting. It's a business opportunity in the middle of the diagram. So we went for that. We got to work. And looking at the life cycle of a product, this is a display system for fast food restaurants that we worked on, one of our first jobs we got. Just by making it modular, we reduced the packaging 80%. So it went from 5 pallets per restaurant to 1. But that wasn't enough. Looking at materials, we could make the aluminium recyclable to the same quality, and also the components were usable. So now when the store owner wanted to change the interior decoration, he phoned this company and they had a working take-back system, so they got to make an offer for the new interior decoration. A great business model. No one would say no to that, but they didn't come up with it because they weren't looking for innovation at the right places. They weren't optimistic about this. So I think we're the first generation, scaringly enough, that realized that humanity isn't a drop in the ocean. Humanity is fighting over the drop in the ocean, and we have to get smart about that. The next point was brilliantly made by Lars. It's about how things are getting distributed. My point I want to make on the smart grid is that when I got the internet, I was introduced to it by a videotape. This is an introduction to internet, 1996, and it was very dry. So today we would get it distributed for YouTube, right? You would get like a totally new way to see this. And I think we're going to need a lot more smarter business models. This is just one idea, but there's a lot of precious minerals in your mobile phone, and most people aren't recycling them. So why not, just like I have on my keys, a small thing where I can put it in the mailbox to get them returned to me. The companies put a small address on their electronics, and you can put them there, and you'll get a discount for the next one you buy from the same brand. It's a good business model. So we'll get more smarter about the way we distribute things, and we'll start to look at mass production will still be around. It's a very efficient way to solve human needs, but we will start to look at mass connected things. In the next 10 years, we'll go from 5 billion connected things to 50 billion connected things. That's not just a change in more connected. We will experience connectivity in a totally new way. Already today, it doesn't affect the price of the sneaker to put a sender and a chip in it so you can sort of monitor your health when you walk around. Imagine when you get those sort of sensors on everything. You can smartly make system about how mass is moving around in the world. For us, this is more on a consumer level where we look at people. People today can't wait to get connected. Donny just introduced us to the wireless connection down here. That's how important it is. When people take a picture today, they're like, I can't wait to go and upload this on Facebook. So if you create products that lets people do what they really want to do, they become really easy to like. So why just put a little small SIM card in that camera, and you can do that. And that's another business model to explore, because the bottleneck technology in a camera is the sensor. And if you put a push button on that camera, you'll get the new sensor in an envelope the next day, and you can do super high definition video instead of just high definition video. So, and you send the old component back. So I think we'll see some very exciting things about that connectivity. So finally, this is my favorite point. In the scale of industrial economics, you easily get like stunned and a little bit scared about the volumes and the computers controlling everything on Wall Street. And there's a lot of other systems building up our economic systems. And I think the central thing in this revolution will be to make things that make sense to people. Because what politician really gets vote without the voters, knowing what they're voting for? We need to make sense out of our world, and we need to clarify what we're being challenged by. This has turned into this mantra for us. If you're not inspired by people in what you do, it's really hard to make anything that's desired by people. So I'm going to give some quick examples. This is from an inspirer of mine's cover of his book, Donald Norman. I'm just going to do a quick show of hands. In these two shakers, one has one hole. How many in this audience believe one hole equals salt? Hands up. That's around 20%. Interesting. So the research in globally from some different talks is that it's around 50%. The interesting thing is this is sort of the science how decisions are made. Because you look at the person next to you and like, how could you think that? But when did you make the decision that one was salt and one was pepper? Probably you don't know this because we navigate this complex human world and we do mappings to feel that we're in control of it. But we rarely do this as a conscious thought. And as a developer of products, we really have to dig deeper to understand how these mappings work. So what people usually do is like they look to the person, you know, they cluster people. So they look at the one whole salt person, health freak, you know. You want less salt. Salt is the best taste enhancer in the world. How could you want one hole for salt? Or something like that. And this is actually how most religious conflicts, how political conflicts and marketing works. So I don't like clustering so much. I think it's much more powerful to dig down and find one person and find one narrative, one perspective, and ask easy questions like, what are you seeing? What are you smelling? You know, what are you tasting? What are you feeling? What are you hearing? A good example is vacuuming. We're not really trained to vacuum. So the average vacuumer consumes 30% more energy than they need to get the job done. And if you just look at the hearing here, putting on a rock song greatly increases the speed of vacuuming. It doesn't maybe get the job done perfectly, but it saves energy to listen to rock music in this case. And I don't think a lot of people are thinking like that. And you know, if you change the music to jazz, you're going to do a more thorough job, this study shows. So, interestingly enough. So what we do is we send out people to just be in the context of real life. And you find really interesting thing. No one really understands, you know, what the hell is APM, scene, etc. You know, that's just built into the logic of camera makers that they have to do this weird interface. But more interestingly is that we hear, they react to the sound. Click, click. That's not good. Click, click. It should be click, click. And this complexity of the experience is actually what we need. We need complexity to find the right ways to simplify it. So then we can start prototyping. Is it better with a linear mapping of that click sound, so we just have a slider for the click sound? Is that what's needed to make people feel in control of this camera? Perhaps. There's a lot of people wanting to photograph their grandchildren who are not, you know, engineers and have had a great time at KTH, this school. So, looking at another aspect, over time we grow a relationship with products, right? Shoes is a great example. You love your shoes, but they're dying on you. You don't want to let them go, but you have to. And basically that's happening because of a price point on a market, on a linear marketing model, where not many shoemakers is investing in one more machine that would make them more sustainable because they compete on price. So you have to reinvent that model. So this is the shoemaker's choice, which on the sole comes with 5 stamps, so you can go back and refurbish your shoes 5 times, just like you do with your car and get better mileage. And you can keep something you love for a longer time. So being inspired by people, to be desired by people might sound quite simplistic, but it's really the most exciting field of science right now. Understanding what we like, how decisions are made, and how we map our complex world is something I think a lot more designers should be looking at. So those are the 4 major shifts I wanted to talk about. And finally, I'll give an example how simple it can be. This is a brilliant design. Just by putting a small little fly on the urinals on airports, giving men something to aim for, you save around 60% of the cleaning in that urinal. That's a lot of chemicals that takes a lot of energy to produce. So what I want to leave you with is that, you know, if you're empowered and make a good understanding of the human perspective, the change doesn't have to be as complex as the understanding. It can be quite simple. We will make sense out of this change, and we will make better designs. And I want to thank you for listening to me.